Very good morning to all of you. વિકસે વિલસે સૌનું જ્ઞાન, ચાલો રચીએ સૌ સંધાન. જ્ઞાન મંચ રિસર્ચ એક્ટિવિટીઝના આ સ્લોટમાં આપણે અગાઉ પણ 3 લેક્ચર્સ સરસ મજાના પ્રસારિત કર્યા. આપને યાદ હશે ડૉક્ટર કામિની રાવલ લાસ્ટ ટાઈમ આવેલા અને એમણે બહુ સરસ મજાની રિસર્ચ મેથોડોલોજીસની વાત કરેલી, પણ એમણે ખાસ કરીને સાયન્સના જે વિષયો છે એના વિશે આપણને વાત કરી. કેટલા બધા એક્ઝામ્પલ્સ આપ્યા. યુનિવર્સિટી ગ્રાન્ટ્સ કમિશનમાંથી કેવી રીતે લોન આપણે આના માટે લઈ શકીએ એના માટેની સરસ વાતો કરી. આજનો જે આપણો આ સ્લોટ છે એમાં ખાસ આપણે આર્ટ્સના જે વિષયો છે, ખાસ કરીને લિટરેચર ઉપર થોડું ફોકસ વધારે કરીશું. અને એ વાતો કરવા માટે જે એક્સપર્ટ્સ મારી સાથે સ્ટુડિયોમાં છે, હું પહેલાં આપને એની ઓળખાણ કરાવી દઉં. ડૉક્ટર દિલીપ બારડ, જે એક્સ્ટ્રીમ લેફ્ટ ઉપર બેઠા છે, તેઓ શ્રી ભાવનગર યુનિવર્સિટીમાં અંગ્રેજી વિભાગના અધ્યક્ષ છે અને રિસર્ચના ક્ષેત્રમાં હી ઇઝ કીનલી ઇન્ટરેસ્ટેડ અને બહુ વખતથી ટેકનોલોજીના ઉપયોગ અને લિટરેચર આ બંનેનું એક બહુ સરસ મજાનો સુમેળ કોમ્બિનેશન એમણે સાબિત કર્યું છે. એ પછી જે બેઠા છે એ તરુણભાઈ પટેલ છે. તેઓ શ્રી પણ કોમ્યુનિકેટિવ સ્કિલ્સના એક્સપર્ટ છે. ખાસ કરીને ટેકનોલોજી રિલેટેડ ઇશ્યુઝ જે હોય એમાં અવારનવારે આપણને મદદરૂપ થાય છે અને તેઓ શ્રી SS એન્જિનિયરિંગ કોલેજ ભાવનગરથી ખાસ બંને મિત્રો આપણે ત્યાં આવ્યા છે. તો આપ બંનેનું હું આ રિસર્ચ એક્ટિવિટીઝના સરસ મજાના સ્લોટમાં આપ બંનેનું સ્વાગત કરું છું. મિત્રો, આજે જે બારડ સાહેબ જે આપણને જે વાત કરવાના છે આજે, એ એઝ આઈ ટોલ્ડ યુ અર્લિયર કે થોડું લિટરેચર ઉપર ફોકસ કરશે અને એમનો આજનો જે વિષય છે એ છે ધ લિટરેચર રિવ્યૂ. તો વધુ સમય ન લેતા હું ડૉક્ટર બારડને રિક્વેસ્ટ કરું કે એ આપને સંબોધે.
Yes, namaskar everybody. Well, so the topic of today's discussion is, as you know from the slide, the literature review, a focused reading with a specific purpose. Well, the subtitle is very significant. The title may be at times misleading, that the literature means to be Sahitya. But this is not related to the Sahitya in the sense we speak about Hindi Sahitya, Gujarati Sahitya or English literature. It is about the literature that is written for the specific purpose of any kind of research, be it a research for the arts faculty, be it a research for the science, engineering, medicine, any kind of faculty. And the literature that is written for the sake of those researches for medicine, pharmacology, other things, they all are known as literature in this sense. So the word is used in the broader sense of the meaning rather than the specific sense for the Sahitya. The subtitle which says a focused reading with a specific purpose. This reading which a research student is doing has a very focused kind of a reading, and there is a specific purpose for doing this also. Now, what is this specific purpose and why he has to be focused on this reading? This is what we are going to discuss in this discussion on the literature review. Well, so the very first question that comes before us is, what is this specific reading and what is this literature review? Any students who goes to the teachers and the guides to ask that I want to write a research paper, I want to do a research, I want to do MPhil and I want to write a dissertation for the MPhil. So many students are instructed by their guides as a part of their research program to perform a literature review. The basic point is that they don't know what is this research about, what is this literature review, and in that case they are facing troubles, problems, that how to go for the literature review. Literature review is a very basic backbone for any kind of research, and if we don't understand specifically that what is this, how it is done, what are the methodologies, we will always going to falter in the research that we are going to do. Well, this flow chart explains the things in a better way. Well, it says that the top bar says literature research, and then there is a document result. It is divided into 4 compartments. The very first important point that comes here is that identifying a topic of interest. The second is generating related questions. These topics will be dealt in the course of the time under this topic, that how to do and what to do in these topics. But here our prime concern is state unsolved problem And that is where literature review plays a very, very important role. How to reach to this point where we have to state unsolved problem. As we move ahead into this discussion, we find that there are sources which are very, very necessary for literature review. And I would like to divide this into three different parts as a source of literature review. The first is primary, the second, as the word goes, secondary, and the tertiary, that is the third source. Any student who is going for the research, they have to understand that this is something which we call it primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary, what is this primary source? As the slide says, materials that you are directly writing about, the raw materials of your own research, which is known as primary. Say for example, if I am doing a work on the works of D.H. Lawrence, then the novels that I am going to deal with, they are my primary source. Secondary source are books and articles in which other researchers report the results of their research based on their primary data or sources. It means that whoever critiques or the research dissertation that has been written on the novels of D.H. Lawrence, they become my secondary sources. And the third one is very interesting one, and it is books and articles based on secondary sources on the research of others. So the second category of the people who are doing the secondary source research, what they are writing on those critics. So it is critics' observations on the critics that they have worked on the primary source. This becomes the third one. As a part of literature review, the research student is going to deal with all these three kinds of sources. He has to concentrate on the primary. He also has to deal what work has been done on the primary, and then what work has been done on the secondary research also. And reading all this thing will make him a better focused reader for the sake of literature review. The point that may come here is that what is literature review? Exactly how can we define this particular thing? Well, the slide says that a literature review is an account of what has been published on a topic by accredited scholars and researchers. Some words are very important in these 2.5 lines. One thing is that published things, it may be an online publication or an offline print publications. The another thing is accredited scholars and research. Anything that has been written on the thing cannot be considered as a very important source of literature review. But we have to be careful that those things are acclaimed. Those things has been accepted as something valuable work that has been done on this. Occasionally it happens that the researchers are asked to write one as a separate assignment, sometimes in the form of an annotated bibliography, but more often it is part of the introduction to an essay, research report, or also a chapter in MPhil or PhD thesis. At times when a student goes to ask to the guide that I want to do this, so obviously they will say that you go and write something and then show me that what is your background. This background reading and writing for those things also becomes literature review. That may be a part of dissertation or thesis, or may not be a part of dissertation or a thesis, but it also is a kind of a literature review.
So, they are asked to review some literature, whatever field they are working in. Now, why are they asked to review the literature? What's the basic purpose of literature review?
Yeah, that's very interesting, a very good question. In the course of our slides also will come to this, that why this is very, very necessary. In one of the slides we'll go through in detail, but here I would like to say that if I don't know that what research has already been done on this particular topic, I will go under what we call it reinventing the wheel. Something that has already been done, I will waste my time, my energy in doing the same kind of a thing.
Right.
Because I don't know what work has been done. So this is the prime thing that one has to do a literature review. It's a kind of a mining work.
Okay.
Before we build a kind of a building or a structure, we go deep into the digging of the things before the structure comes up. So that is one key, very important thing that literature review plays a very vital role. The second important point that comes here is that many people has done work on that particular topic, and some of the questions remains unanswered. And you are expected to answer those questions. So the questions which remains unanswered, now you can extend with your own thought process. That okay, this is where the research has done, but he is incomplete in his research. I want to take a step further from this particular thing. There also literature review helps a lot to young researchers. So what is the purpose of literature review? On the slide we can see here, the basic purpose is to convey what knowledge and ideas have been established on a topic and what their strengths and weaknesses are. As a piece of writing, the literature review must be defined by a guiding concept, and it is not just descriptive list of the material available or a set of summaries. Well, at times we come to know this about this word, and what people normally do under the literature review is that they list down the work that has been done. They find 10 books, then say this work is done. They find articles, they find dissertation, thesis, and then they will list down, and they will write a kind of a brief summary of what things are discussed there. But exactly, is that a literature review or not? That also is an important question.
So that leads us to another question, that what is not literature
What
review?
is not
Yeah,
a
what is
literature
not
review?
literature?
Very
Yeah,
interesting
exactly.
point. We come to that next slide on the screen. What is not literature review? Very important one. If we don't understand this, we are going to make a mistake in our literature review. Well, it is not chronological catalog of all of the sources, but an evaluation integrating the previous research together. But it is to explain how it integrates into the proposed research program. All sides of an argument must be clearly explained to avoid bias, and areas of agreement and disagreement should be highlighted. So it says that it is not a chronological order. In this year this work is done, in the another year this work is done. But in that particular list of the works, if my focus is a particular one, then according to my focus, which works are helpful to me? Again, if I go back to D.H. Lawrence, if I am doing a feministic reading of D.H. Lawrence's works, maybe the psychological work is not much important to me.
Right.
And the review that I am doing of some articles which are studying the psychological aspect of D.H. Lawrence's novel or the autobiographical element, they may not be very much helpful to me. So I have to avoid those things in my literature review.
Okay.
I may read it, but I may not include them as one very
Exactly.
important chapter into my
Right.
dissertations or thesis. Then it is not collection of quotes and paraphrasing some other sources, but good literature review should also have some evaluation of the quality and finding of the research. After reading all this thing, it is not only summarizing the things, but how do you value it?
Okay.
How do you evaluate it from your angle? So there is a kind of a critical analysis that also is going on.
So in a standard review, we should provide the details of what has been talked about
Exactly.
in the work
Yes.
and our analysis.
Our analysis.
Right.
That is the very important. So what we do is that we are reading hundreds of articles that are secondary sources,
Right.
and then the tertiary sources also we are reading another 100 articles. Say for example we read 200 articles.
Right.
Now my focus is to see a specific work in a particular way only. Out of 200, maybe only 20 are useful to me.
Okay. Yeah.
So I will have my own
Exactly.
order of chronology of
Exactly.
putting those 20 into
Exactly.
an order.
Right.
And then I will also give my critical appreciation of those things.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
That will raise many questions in the mind of the researcher. That okay, so and so critic has said this, it has been accepted, but I challenge those acceptance. I challenge
Exactly.
those arguments, and I put my own arguments. And to challenge those arguments, I have to give my own justifications. And that is what my third and the fourth and the fifth chapter will discuss, that how I am challenging those things, and now how I am going to discuss those particular things. So if a literature review is not good, you are not going to challenge the arguments, and
Exactly.
then your critical work is not going to be of any value also. Again, that reinventing of the wheel may happen, or maybe those arguments are questioned by many people. You
Yeah.
are not saying anything new into the process.
Right.
So this is
friends,
yes.
it's good to know about the basis of a literature review. And Dr. Barad, it would be good if you could provide a brief overview of the literature
How it can
review.
be
Yes, yes,
done.
How we could go about it.
Yeah, so before we go to this, what Tarunji is asking here, that how to do this, I would like to show this slide also, which is what we have discussed briefly. But here it says in detail 1, why do a literature review? The question that normally
Yes.
people ask, that why should we go for a literature review? Well, see here, first is to identify gaps. The gaps in the research that has already been done.
Okay.
And then it is avoid reinventing the wheel, carry on from where others have already completed or left, identifying other people's working in the same fields, So this also plays a very vital role. You can collaborate with many people that okay, you are also doing here some work, I am here, let us collaborate and then extend the kind of a thing. And to fathom the depth of knowledge of your subject area. So we go much deeper into the same kind of a thing. That, how far, how deep we can go into our research area. This helps us. This also is very interesting. Opposing views. Literature review is not only to find out that what supports my argument, it also is to identify what is opposing my own hypothesis. If I say that a particular poet is of this kind, the others may say you are wrong. So I have to take that into consideration, that why he says something that is opposed to my own hypothesis, and that the argument also becomes a very necessary one.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, to put your work into wider perspective, this is very much necessary. You can stand with T.S. Eliot and such kind of a critic if you evaluate them also when you are evaluating your own works. To identify methods that could be relevant to your project, to identify seminal works in your area, to provide the intellectual context of your own work, enabling you to position your project in relation to another work. This is how it works out. Well, so coming to your point, that methodology,
Yes.
that how to do all these things and what can be one of the shortest way to deal that my literature review goes in a better way. Well, the slide reads here, a literature review must do these things: to organize around and relate directly to the thesis of research questions we are developing, synthesize results into a summary of what is and is not known, identify areas of controversy in the literature, formulate questions that need further research. The first thing when we do the research thing, we have to formulate many questions, that this is where the things are done, now we are moving ahead in a particular direction. How can we do this? The following slide says that you have to ask some questions to yourself and to the research area which you are dealing here. So ask yourself questions like this: what is the specific thesis?